So I've been living in Australia now for around 3 years, and I know this time of year, because this is the time of year I started to think about moving to Australia because it gets colder in England, and you start to think maybe I should, move abroad, which is what I did back in 2018. And yeah, I decided to come for a year. I've ended up staying a lot longer. It's now 6 years later, and everything's changed since then. Yeah, a lot too much to go into in this video. What I want to talk about now is just the pros and cons of living in Australia and specifically coming from the UK. What's life like? What's different? What's better? Mostly going to be pros, to be honest, because I think it is a great place to live. But yeah, we'll get into it. Starting off with the pros, and in no particular order, and I'm going to try and not be like super generic and just talk about the weather and things like that. I would say coming from Manchester, one of the biggest pros for me was how multicultural it is, because before I come to Sydney, I kind of had a picture in my mind of like surfer dudes, guys with long hair, Steve Irwin, that kind of stuff. But it's not like that really at all. Like, especially in Sydney, maybe if you go outside of the, Sydney, Melbourne, it'll be like that. But particularly in Sydney, it's very multicultural, and yeah, which is a great thing because you get to meet people from all walks of life. You get to try all this amazing food. Like, no matter what food you like, there'll be an amazing restaurant that serves it. Just around here, there's like Korean, Chinese, Lebanese, Mongolian within like a 5 minutes walk of where I live. So that just shows you like the variety of foods that are available. And it's not just about food, obviously. You get to meet people from all walks of life, people you never previously would have spoke to. I met my wife here in the first month, and she's not British, not Australian, and we met in a hostel, and it's just amazing how you can meet people from all over the world, and that would be probably my favorite thing about living in Sydney. When I first started to travel, the main thing I wanted to do was get different perspectives of life, how people live in different countries, and experience all that. And I feel like Australia is a very good way of experiencing that without it being too much of a culture shock. Because being a British person, and I'd say this is point number two, if you're British and you want to move abroad, Australia is the best option. I've lived in Canada as well. I would say Australia is a lot better because it's very easy to slip into being comfortable because obviously the language and everything like that, the culture is very similar. And I've lived in Canada where it's different. I feel like Australia has a closer connection to the UK, even though it is so far away. Next point would be, and I know this is super generic, super obvious point, but the weather in Australia is amazing. I'm in Sydney, and like today is spring. It's a few days into spring. And it's like 25 degrees, just been sunny all day. And I'd say for 9 months of the year, you pretty much get sun. It's pretty warm. It gets really hot in the summer, which isn't great. The spring and autumn are definitely the best seasons to come if you want to travel. The winter can get very wet, but in general, it's not too bad, especially when you compare it to the UK. The third thing, and it was the first thing that I noticed when I first come to Australia, as I got off the train and I saw what we call bin chickens, but they're called white ibis is the real name. And you see so much different types of nature here. And a few people have said this to me, and it's what I thought when I first came was the sounds of the birds. Like when you live in England, you're used to the sounds of the birds. It's just kind of in the background and you don't really notice it. And you come to Australia, there's all these like exotic birds everywhere. I'm talking like I went for a run today, and I must have seen 15 species of birds that you don't usually see in England. I saw like giant pelican, saw black swans, loads of these little birds that make really loud noises, kookaburras, cockatoos, and that's one of the main things you'll notice at first. And a few people have said that as well. But for me, it's still fresh. Like when it starts to become summer and you hear all the crickets and cicadas and things like that, and you kind of remember like, oh yeah, I'm in a totally different environment to the UK. It's like pretty exotic place. Next point would be if you're into like outdoor stuff and like running, for example, or any sports, like you're gonna love it in Australia. I play football, I run, I've done like kickboxing, rock climbing. People really like to keep active here, and I think that's part of the culture with it being sunny as well, and especially in the summer, people will get up at like 5 a.m. to go run before work, go surfing before work, and things like that. A lot of gym classes will start really early, partly because of how hot it gets in the peak as well. So I went for a run today, 7 a.m. It was pretty busy, like on the main front where I live. But then the infrastructure here is so good. Like within 5 minutes, I can be in a trail run and there's no one else around. It's just surrounded by nature. Next point, slightly different, would be around earning potential. Because if you're coming from England and you come in here, and I'm not talking as like a student, if you come in here as like, if you're a professional working in Australia and you stay for longer than a couple of years, you have to have some kind of qualification, some kind of good experience in the field that you work in to stay here realistically. I work in marketing. Luckily I've been able to get sponsored for permanent residency. But if you don't do something that's not on what they call the skill shortage list, then it's quite difficult to stay. The benefit of this is if you come over here with experience in a job, the earning potential is very much higher in Australia. And pretty much everyone I've met in Australia earns more here than they do back home. And I know people say, well, it costs more in Australia. Not really. Like these days, I would say, yeah, the rent is more expensive here, but it's maybe like 20% more expensive, where your wage could be, mine's almost double than it was back home. So when I was living back in England, I didn't really have much money outside of paying for rent and maybe going out for food like once a week. Here, going out for food is a lot cheaper and it's a lot better. The food's much higher quality and it's cheaper, which is unbelievable. Like when I first come to Australia, I assumed that everything would be super expensive, but it's really not. I would say other than rent, most things are similar or cheaper in Australia. Although drinking is definitely more expensive in Australia, but if you're like me, you don't drink too much, it's not really much of a problem. Okay, yeah, that's all the positives, and there's probably a lot more positives that I've not talked about, but I would say they're the main ones. In summary, it's an amazing place to live, and if you have the experience of even just living here for 1 year, I would say do it. You definitely wouldn't regret it. I don't know anyone who's moved here and regretted just spending 1 year in Australia. It's definitely worth it if you can do it. Okay, going into the cons, and as I would say, like a lot of these cons would apply to any country that like you would move to, because the first one being it's very far away from Europe, which is obvious, but when you come here, like sometimes I'll go on Google Maps and I'll look at Sydney and I'm like, holy shit, like this is very far away from Europe. Like it's 24-hour flight. And even if you want to travel like on holiday, there's not as many options. Like you can obviously go to like Southeast Asia or Bali and places like that, which is relatively cheap to fly to, but you don't have as many options where in Europe, obviously you can go all over Europe. You can get to America easy as well. And it's quite expensive to fly anywhere, even internally. Second con would be if I wanted to travel a lot of Australia. I wanted to see a lot more of Australia before I moved here, but I've not been really able to because it's very expensive. Like if you're taking internal flights, which are not too bad, but then, you know, if you go on holiday to Cairns, for example, it's quite expensive to get a hotel and just the cost of living, the cost of buying food, buying drinks. And then if you compare that, you can probably get a flight for the same price to go to Bali and spend like half as much, and it's like a totally different environment. Most people go on holiday to there because of that reason, I think. And yeah, I've not seen as much as Australia as I would like to have done, but I'm hoping that will change in the future. I really want to do a lot more traveling in Australia and see like the west, north. I want to go inland as well to the outback, which I've not seen yet. Second negative would be obviously keeping in touch with people back home. It's quite difficult because of the time difference is the main reason, to be honest. I still obviously message my family and friends most days, but there's always like an overlap, like when they're going to bed, I'm waking up, and there's not many points in the day where it's easy to have a FaceTime and things like that. So that's pretty tough. And the good thing is like there's a lot of British expats out here, so you can meet people and everyone's in the same position. Finally, and not many people talk about this reason, but I would say even though the weather is amazing, the sun exposure is a little bit of a problem. Like if you see a white person who's been living in Australia for years, the skin is probably going to be in a bad condition because the sun is so strong. In the summer, if you come out without sun cream on, you're going to feel your skin burning almost instantly. It's a very strange feeling because I think apparently there's a gap in like the ozone layer in Australia. In the UK in the summer, like I feel like not many people wear sun cream, but Here you have to wear sun cream every day, and if you're bald like me, you have to wear a cap. You have to wear factor 50 pretty much every day. In the winter, you can probably get away with it, but I usually just wear it every day because yeah, you can so easily get burnt. And then finally, the final con, and this probably again goes for most countries, but the cost of buying property here is very expensive. So if you want to stay here long term, you really have to consider like, can I actually afford to stay here? Because we live in Sydney. If I was to buy the property that I'm in, which is a fairly small like one bedroom apartment, it would be around $700,000 to $800,000, so like £400,000. But obviously, if I was to buy something in the UK, get something a lot bigger than that. You get a house probably. I'm not really that close to the city either. I'm like a 35-minute train away. But you know, I can't complain. It's an amazing country. People are amazing. The weather's amazing. Very good opportunities. If you're ever thinking about moving to Australia, just go for it. And even if it's just for a year, try it. If it's not for you, then you can always just come home.